Well, this year's AFC Championship game is a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game, the New England Patriots hosting the Baltimore Ravens. New England is currently installed as a 9.5-point favorite on BETDAQ, 51 the total in this game. The Ravens, of course, are not supposed to be here. This was supposed to be another Brady versus Manning, supposed to be New England at Denver. The Broncos looked like the best team in the NFL heading into the postseason. They had won 11 straight games. All 11 of those wins had come by 7 points or more. But the Baltimore Ravens shocked the football-watching world last week, going on the road and beating the Broncos 38-35 in double overtime. It was a great game. Denver scored 2 non-offensive touchdowns and still could not win the game. And Baltimore has to be given a lot of credit on both sides of the ball. Their defense, no doubt, played great in limiting Manning to 21 offensive points. But what about the play of Joe Flacco? 331 passing yards. This is a guy who's been widely criticized really throughout his time in Baltimore. He's mostly been viewed as the problem in Baltimore, the main weakness. Now, that changed a little bit this season, especially through the first 5 or 6 weeks when Flacco got off to a good start and the Baltimore defense really wasn't quite what it had been in years past. But as the year went along, Flacco started to struggle again like we've seen in the past. But here we are once again in the playoffs, and once again Joe Flacco playing his best football. Now, Flacco maybe had the best game of his career in last year's AFC Championship game, a game that the Baltimore Ravens should have won. If Lee Evans had not dropped a touchdown pass with less than a minute left, the Ravens would have won that game, would have represented the AFC in the Super Bowl instead of New England. But ancient history now, we all know New England went on to lose to the New York Giants. And obviously, odds makers think New England is going to once again represent the AFC this year. They are a big favorite in this game. 9.5 is that number on BETDAQ, as we said. Now, the Ravens have been a popular public bet this week. Out in Las Vegas, this line has moved in the Ravens' direction, down to 8.5 most books. It's even at 8 at a couple of places. Quite frankly, I'm a little bit surprised that line moved, just because people love to bet on Brady and Belichick, especially in the playoffs, especially at home, and who can blame them? I mean, you saw New England last week against the Houston Texans. This offense is as close to unstoppable as we have in the NFL today. They're the best offense in the league by any measure. They were number 1 in the NFL in total offense this year, meaning yards per game. Also number 1 in points per game, scoring offense. They averaged nearly 35 points per game. And they look like their same old machine-like self last week against a very good defense in the Houston Texans. Even though Baltimore has the reputation for playing good defense, they did not play good defense throughout most this season. Finished the year ranked 17th in the NFL in total defense. Now it has to be mentioned that Baltimore's veteran core, Terrell Suggs, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, they had not been on the field together all season until their first playoff game against the Indianapolis Colts a couple of weeks ago. So the last 2 games, the Baltimore defense has looked more like the Baltimore defense that we've all come to know over the last few years. So that's definitely a bright spot, and I think something that Baltimore fans and Baltimore bettors are hanging on to here as some hope, because they need something to hang on to. Because if you take a couple of steps back of this game and really look at it, last year's game aside, when Baltimore played them tough, last week's game aside, when Baltimore upset the Denver Broncos, I mean, these two teams were very different this season. New England, as we mentioned, was number 1 in the league in total offense and scoring offense. Baltimore, meanwhile, 16th in total offense, 17th in total defense. The Ravens lost 4 out of the last 5 regular season games. New England, throughout the regular season, was a much better team. That being said, way back in September, Baltimore did beat the Patriots 31-30 at home. So, there's a few things there's a few things in Baltimore's favor here. Number 1, they beat the Patriots earlier this year. Number 2, they beat the Broncos last week, upset everybody. They were also a 9.5-point underdog last week. Surprised everybody, that is, not necessarily upset everybody. I'm sure they pleased their fans, didn't upset them very much, did they? You also have to take into consideration the New England Patriots have won a lot of games this year big. Josh McDaniels back calling plays for New England this year. The last time McDaniels was calling plays for New England was the last time they were scoring this many points, the last time they were beating opponents by this many points. New England has won 10 out of their last 11 games. 5 of those 10 wins have been by 28 points or more. 12 of New England's 13 wins this season have come by 6 points or more. So the Patriots have won a lot of games, and they haven't been winning many games close. Now, the last 6 times New England and Baltimore have played, they've almost all been close. 5 out of the last 6 meetings between New England and Baltimore have been decided by 6 points or less. And the only one of those 6 games that wasn't decided by 6 points or less was a Baltimore win back in 2010. So a lot of arguments to be made for both sides here. I feel like Baltimore is sort of the sentimental favorite here, with Ray Lewis possibly playing the last game of his storied career. We all thought Lewis's career was going to come to an end last week in Denver, but as we all know now, his career extended 1 more week at least. He was very emotional at the end of that game. So I think a lot of people rooting for the Ravens this week, and a Ravens bet just feels very easy. They're getting a lot of points here. It's easy to root for them anyway. New England's sort of the bad guy. Nobody likes rooting for the favorite. And Brady, Belichick, certainly they've had enough success. I think we're all ready to see some new blood in the Super Bowl. So like everybody else, I would like to bet on Baltimore in this game, but I can't help but feel a little bit like it's sort of the suckers play. The public's on Baltimore. It's easy to take the points in a situation like this. We mentioned the Ravens are a team that it's easy to pull for in a game like this. So I feel like a New England play here from a bettor's perspective might be the right play. Not only because of the stat size cited, but I just think that Baltimore might be a little overvalued right now after what we saw last week against the Denver Broncos. It could be a good sell high time for the Ravens. All that being said, I don't gamble for my living, and if I did, maybe I'd look at this game a little differently. Part of what we try to do, the primary thing we try to do as bettors is make money, but we also bet because it's fun. And you know what? In looking at this game, I want to root for the Ravens. I want to bet on the Ravens. I think a Ravens bet here is perfectly reasonable for a bunch of reasons. We mentioned the last 6 games have all been close. 5 out of the last 6 games between these two teams decided by 6 points or less. Like everybody else, I sold Baltimore short last week. I don't want to do the same thing again this week. So even though I think it's sort of against my better judgment, I said earlier this week, a New England bet here feels like sort of your older brother bet, the bet that's no fun but it's probably going to be right in the end, and that is the way I feel about this game. But hey, I'm going to bet on Baltimore here. I think the Ravens have a shot. They can be had at better than 3-1 on your money on the money line. I think that's a bet worth considering. I think they have an outside shot at winning this game. I'd like to see them win this game. I'm rooting for them. I think a Baltimore bet is a reasonable play. It's obviously, I don't feel like it's necessarily a really smart play. It's certainly not one of my favorite plays. I like the other game a little better. I like the underdog in the other game also, Atlanta and the points. But you know what? I'm going to go with Baltimore here and hope it works out. Maybe you'll join me. I know a lot of other people already have.